Who's going to be obviously covers the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and co-host of Cofield and Company on ESPN 1100. Adam, great to have you back with us here. Merry Christmas to you a day early. The Raiders, it feels like obviously 63 points in that win on a Thursday night helped get Brandon Staley relieved of his duties in La La Land. What's the motivation going forward now? I know it's the Chiefs. I know it's an old AFC rivalry with the Raiders and the Chiefs. It feels like under AP, these guys are actually fighting. Is it a tangible difference around this team now?
Yeah, I think so. But also, imagine how bad this game would be if the Patriots could actually kick.
Right.
This is a disaster.
Oh man,
I feel like we're watching a bowl game.
yes, a bad one.
Yeah. Look, I in terms of your question about the Raiders, what is the motivation left? I mean, obviously they like AP. They're playing for his job. They really like Champ Kelly, who's the interim GM, and they want to keep him around. They're kind of playing for him, but I caution a little bit when people are like, "This team's really fighting. They look good." Like before the Chargers game, when the Chargers absolutely quit on the field and allowed the Raiders to do what they did, this is a team that got shut out at home by the Vikings and didn't move the ball at all. So, I mean, I know that we have recency bias. We think back to what happened in the last game when the Raiders looked good. I mean, I know the Raiders fans hate hearing this when I say it, and I've said it a couple times this week, but I put that game a lot more on the Chargers being terrible than the Raiders doing anything good. I mean, you still have to make the wide open throws when they're there, and there's quarterbacks who believe they can't do that, and the Raiders did that. But they took advantage of a team that absolutely quit. I don't think I've watched a game where a team quit to that level since I've been covering this league. So that was pretty wild to see. But I don't know if the Raiders got maybe some false confidence out of that, but sometimes that works. I actually talked to a former Raider the other day about a story that I was working on, and I said, you know, because he was saying the same thing. He said, look, that was the Chargers being bad. That was the Raiders being good. And I said, well, can you trick yourself into being confident? And he said, absolutely. As somebody do all the time, you're like, hey, look, we're good. Because again, a week ago, they were looked at as a laughingstock and one of the worst performances we've ever seen, and all of a sudden they're amazing. It's kind of wild how those swings turn. So I think it all comes down to how they can react from that, how they can bounce back, and they have 3 games to prove if they want Antonio Pierce and Champ Kelly around that they should be around.
Adam, one more on the Raiders here, because it has been widely reported that, look, Antonio Pierce has a legitimate chance at this job, even though we hear the scuttlebutt of all these different coaches that Mark Davis could be looking to bring in. What do you think Antonio Pierce, if you were to make kind of a diagnosis or lay out a scenario, what do you think Antonio Pierce has to do to get this job going forward? Win out, or just, how they play, or is there a potential scenario where you see that happening?
Look, if he wins out, I think he's the coach. I don't think there's much question about that. And I think part of it comes down to what happened with Rich Bisaccia. And, for those that don't follow the Raiders very closely, Rich Bisaccia was an interim coach. He led them to a playoff berth when they had no business being in the playoffs. That roster was not good at all. And he leads them to the playoffs. And then he's the interim coach, but he doesn't get a chance to be the head coach. And I think, at the time, it was probably the right decision by Mark Davis. He obviously made the wrong hire in Josh McDaniels, but I didn't think Rich Bisaccia was ready to necessarily. He's ready, but I didn't think he was head coaching, that he was best suited for that position. And so he didn't get the job. But I think Mark Davis regrets that a little bit of not saying, like, hey, he deserved a chance and didn't really get a fair chance. So I think he's going to look at Antonio Pierce a little longer because of that situation. But I think there's a lot he has to do. And look, it depends what you want. Like, these guys love Antonio Pierce. They play very hard for him. They've reacted very well. There's no question. And on that level, you say, hey, look, this guy probably deserves a chance. They want to play for him. But at the same time, even in the game against the Chargers, he's made at least one egregious decision in terms of head coaching moves in every single game that he's been there. And some of them get overlooked. With the one against the Chargers where he accepted a penalty that he absolutely should not have, it gets overlooked because they win so big. But every game there's been something that's been a really, really bad choice for a head coach. You can't have that consistently and be a head coach in this league. So that's also something to think about. While there's very, very good things to look at, there's also some tough ones that you have to evaluate.
Talking with Adam Hill from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Can follow him on X at Adam Hill, LVRJ. One more on that, because there was some scuttlebutt out there in the coaching rumors about Gruden coming back. Could they really go down that road again?
Some people I talk to say absolutely yes, they could. And some people say there's no chance it's going to happen. I'm in the camp that there is a chance. Like, I don't think it's the most likely scenario for sure, but I think it's silly to just diminish it and say there's no way, for a couple of reasons. One, Mark Davis wants to do the unexpected. He loves doing that. He loves surprising people, and he loves being right. And I think he would love to hire John Gruden and have him have success and say, I told you so. And the other side is the trial aspect of this, because there's been some, John Gruden is suing the NFL, and for those that haven't followed the case, there's been some rulings in his favor in this lawsuit, and it looks like we're going to have discovery in this case, and how, regardless of how that lawsuit turns out, the last thing the NFL wants is discovery, where all of this information, every email from that, from that stash of emails that was reported, and we only saw like a very few of them, they're all public, and there's a lot more communications between owners that are going to be public, and there's just a lot of things that nobody wants to talk about or nobody wants to see that could come out in this trial. So I think if Mark Davis went to the NFL and said, hey, I'm going to hire him, and he'll drop the suit, I think the NFL would be very amenable to something like that happening. So I think that's kind of a variable in this that isn't talked about enough.
Adam, moving over to the matchup tomorrow with Kansas City. Look, we saw Miami today finally get that win over a good team. They had been beaten up on the lower teams in the league, and they finally beat a legitimately good team today. Granted, it was at home. We know what Baltimore has done. They're getting the number one AFC versus NFC matchup tomorrow in the nightcap on Monday night. And then there's the Chiefs, are kind of just hanging around there, 9-5, still a solid team, but they don't look like the vintage Chiefs. What's your kind of makeup or your analysis, I guess, of this team for what we're seeing? Because it's been the defense dominating, and the offense has just looked out of sync almost all year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And you guys missed the breaking news of the extra point being made. That was kind of wild to see.
There we go.
Yeah. I think, the Chiefs are obviously an interesting team to follow, because they're still going to win the division. They're still, the class of the AFC West. There's no question. And the AFC West didn't live up to what some people thought it could be this year. The Chargers, didn't live up to expectations. The Broncos certainly early in the year fell short of what people thought they were going to be. And now they could potentially lose this game as well. So the Chiefs looks like they're going to cruise to a division title. But they're a certainly different team, as you mentioned, than they have been. Their defense has been very, very good, and I think they've stockpiled a lot of talent the last couple of years to make it good. The offensive line has been really bad, and I think with all the talk of the receivers, we lose the fact that Jawan Taylor has been an absolute disaster at right tackle, and that's been a big factor for them as well. Then you have the receiving issues, and they just haven't had that explosiveness that we've expected. And look, I think Travis Kelce is also hurt. I think that's another part of this, that he's getting older, but he's also been injured. It's been lingering all year, so they haven't had that aspect of their game going very well. Wow, I might be on a delay from you guys, but that's wild. And so I would say, I keep waiting for the explosion on offense, right? You keep waiting for the game where they just bust out and everything clicks again. And if that offense does get going, if they do turn a corner, if they do figure it out and become not even the offensive hold, but just a good offense again, that's a scary team with the defense that they have with Andy Reid and Mahomes. Like, anything can happen, and they can still beat anybody. But we just haven't seen it. And at some point, you stop expecting it to click and you just realize that they're just not very good. And I think that's kind of the point we're getting to now. Saying that, you never know. These last couple of weeks, it could erupt at any point. Like I said, I think I've been a holdout longer than most people have, but we just haven't seen any signs that it's going to happen.
Only about 45 seconds to go, Adam. Very quickly, still Chiefs 11, total of 40.5. If you had to go one way or the other, which way would you go, side or total?
I mean, I feel like I would go. Again, I keep waiting for the breakout, and I think I would probably go Chiefs and over. I think it's going to happen. The Raiders' defense has been so good, but you can only hold it back for so long. If the offense, the offense looks like it did last week, fine. It probably won't. It'll probably look somewhere between what they did against last week and against the Vikings. So I think they'll put up about 17, and I think the Chiefs will kind of roll to a big win.
Adam, we appreciate it on this Christmas Eve for your time. Enjoy the holiday season. We'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good. You guys too.
There he is, everybody. And Adam was like doing play-by-play like we were. We're aghast. 2 touchdowns in the span of what? 10 seconds for the Patriots?
23-7, 128 left to go in the third. 6 very sweaty Circus Survivor contestants. Right?
Over $9 million. Oh, my God. Whew. Come on back. We're rolling.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.